Okay, I'm going to continue my presentation about informatics and PICC line placement and how it has affected the nursing care as well as the nurse's role and the patient's safety. I'm in our EPIC program now. This is the page that we would look to see our patient list for PICC lines. Normally this area here, if we had PICC lines ordered today, would be populated with the patient, the room number, the time that the order was placed, and when they wanted us to, the reasoning behind that placement. So we would start out here, open up our patient's chart. I'm going to cover the video for just a moment while I open up a patient's chart so that I can maintain that HIPAA privacy. Just a moment, we'll get to it. Okay, and so here I have my patient's chart opened, and I have the name tag here, a piece of paper to cover the patient's name because we do not want to violate our HIPAA policy here. So we can see the patient did have a PICC line ordered yesterday, and after investigation we found that the patient no longer required the PICC line, so we no longer had to deal with that. We can go here to chart review. And one of the things we're going to look for under chart review is we're going to look under our labs for this patient. We want to see if there are cultures drawn. We could go here to microbiology specifically and search, and just a click away we find that this patient had blood cultures. I will not open them for privacy purposes, but if these cultures were not negative, we would not place that PICC line at this time. Other things we would look for here in the chart review is also we can go to notes. We can find in our notes what the physicians have written in regards to the PICC line. Also in the notes, we can click consults, and in the consults we'll see that we can populate infectious disease notes that will tell us whether or not the patient requires IV antibiotics. Or for whatever reason, we can also look under here to find nephrology consults. That we would not do a PICC line again on a patient who had a potential for the need of an extremity for dialysis purposes. So these are important investigative measures we're able to do today with our technology and informatics that the team before could not do it because they didn't have all this opportunity at the click. Over here in this corner is PICC documentation. If we were going to put a PICC line in a patient, this is the chapter built specifically for us that will let us document things like education. We want to document for the patient that the PICC line was started or that the information was given, the patient was educated, and we put all this information here. The next thing we'd want to do when we go back to PICC documentation, well, we can also document our time out for this patient if we were going to populate yes, that we checked correct patient, correct procedure, site, marked, and this is important data to make sure we have the right patient at the right time. This data would match also the data that we showed you in Sherlock, where we populate date of birth, medical record number, and patient name, and becomes a part of the permanent record. The next thing we do is click IV assessment. Here with the IV assessment, not only can we see what other lines are already in place as we scroll through, we would have an opportunity here to also add an LDA, which is we populate the word PICC here, and it would open up for us. If we were to put here a single lumen PICC, then it takes us to the chapter where we would populate all our information about did we use Sherlock to verify the placement, when did we put it, time, what type of PICC it is, the size of PICC it is, where the placement ended up, where it is placed on the patient right or left arm, what vein we put it in. Typically we like to go in the basilic if we can, how long the catheter was, who put the PICC in, what the vein diameter is. We can populate all this on one page. And the good thing about this is the nurses and the team caring for this PICC can go in this chart with just a click and get all that information. I'm going to cancel here. Get all that information without having to worry about going down to medical records or going through old charts to find out where this information could be. Another thing we find on here is our charge capture. We have a section built here specifically for PICC lines. That would be charge capture. Here we'd be able to charge for the tray. We'd also be able to charge for the billing of the actual insertion We don't have to send stickers off to anywhere or post it in another place or down to MPD. We will populate these charges here, and it will trigger these supplies to be replaced on our cart immediately. It just solves so much of the legwork for the nurse and for the secretaries. I'm going to close here because we don't want to do that for real. In the manage order sections, this is where we would find the opportunity that we'd put a PICC consult in here. And it would trigger, again, more billing information for us. Over here again, we would find the consults, and this is where we can go in and cancel our consult, say that our consult is completed. So you can see it's just a click away to gather all this information, to document all this information. The orders are easily accessible in the order history, and nobody has to go searching for a doctor or a team member to be able to find this information. I'm going to cover the computer again one more time while I go to one more page in the informatics. I don't want to violate that HIPAA problem. So just a moment while I look at another spot. I just want to make sure that I'm not exposing any phone numbers for the patient. Family members, and I've covered the ones for the family members, and now what we have are phone numbers for the people who care for the patient. So here on the summary page, we're able to see the team caring for the patient. If we needed to call the infectious disease doctor, here we go. He's programmed in his phone number immediately. We can call this number and say, are you ready for this PICC line to be inserted? Are you cultures have been negative for 48 hours? Do you want to wait one more day? What do we need to do here? Also on here, we can find immediately, and sometimes it's an avatar picture. This time it's just words here, but we can see where our lines are currently. We can see if the patient has a pacemaker. We can see if the patient has had any surgeries, like breast surgeries. We can see for whether or not they're intubated, whether they have triple lumen catheters in place that inhibit the placement of the PICC line. This is a very useful spot here. Gives us all kinds of information about what the patient has going on at the time. Also over here on this same page, here are our labs. We want to know what the creatinine is. We want to know if the patient's in kidney failure. If so, we want to avoid, again, we want to check again with the nephrologist, make sure we're not going to need an extremity for a dialysis catheter. We want to check the PT and the INR to make sure that the clotting is going to be okay for this patient, as well as the platelet count. This is a tremendously helpful informatic page. Anybody in the hospital system caring for patients has access to this page. It's immediately rewarding to us and tremendously helpful for us. So when we're chasing zero here at Wake Med, that means that we're avoiding starting any new infections. So being able to discern all this information about whether or not lines will be in our way, whether or not labs will be a problem, who's going to be caring for our patients, PICC lines in the staffing area, and then our chart review again with all our labs, populating so that we can say whether or not the patient has a blood culture pending, and our notes that gives us information about why the PICC line is necessary. All of this together works in favor and gives the nurses in the PICC line team so much autonomy in placing the PICC lines now.